Hey everyone, ready to dive into a topic that impacts literally every part of our lives. We're talking trust. Whether you're leading a team, building a relationship, or just, navigating everyday life, trust is that essential ingredient, that foundation. And what's wild is how we often kind of take it for granted until it's broken, right? And then, bam, the impact hits you like a ton of bricks. And speaking of impact, our deep dive today comes from Wikiversity's Earning Trust resource. And let me tell you, they highlight some pretty eye-opening costs of mistrust that go way beyond just like financial loss. We're talking emotional toll, missed opportunities, the whole shebang.
Yeah, it's almost like a hidden tax we pay without even realizing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So think of this resource as our roadmap as we navigate these different levels of trust, from distrust, where you're basically on high alert 24/7, to wary, which, let's be honest, is that classic trust but verify approach, all the way to get this unconditional trust, which I got to say almost sounds too good to be true, doesn't it?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because even in its most basic form, even going way back, trust, or the lack of it, was crucial for survival.
Oh, absolutely.
That wary stage you talked about,
Yeah.
that's hardwired into us, man.
Right.
Our ancestors, they relied on it to assess threats, stay alive.
Makes you appreciate that whole fight or flight response in a whole new light, right? Like those internal alarm bells are going off, telling us to proceed with caution, especially when we're feeling vulnerable. And speaking of vulnerability, can we talk about that leap of faith we take when we move from like wary to optimistic trust? Like each promise kept is another brick in that foundation, right? Slowly building that sense of security.
Absolutely, and it's not just about blind faith. The
Really?
source material does a great job with this analogy of two acrobats.
I love a good analogy.
One is completely reliant on the other.
Okay.
So picture this. You're the acrobat up top, suspended in midair.
Okay. Got a visual.
You're not just trusting blindly at that point, right?
No.
You're trusting in their intent and
Right.
their ability to, well, catch you.
Whoa. Okay, now I'm a little lightheaded.
It's a powerful image.
Yeah.
And the thing is, this applies to so many areas of life. Think about it. You trust a dentist with your teeth, but you're probably not asking them to fix your car.
Unless it's like a really tricked out dental chair.
Yeah.
No, you need a mechanic for that.
Exactly. We get that trust is often tied to certain skills and capabilities.
Solely.
So being upfront about our own abilities and, just as important, our limitations is key.
It's huge.
That whole over-promising and under-delivering thing,
Oh, yeah.
that's a recipe for disaster.
It's the worst, right? When someone's like, yeah, I got you, and then nothing. Crickets. It makes you question everything else they say.
Absolutely, and that's why rebuilding trust after, let's call it a breach, can feel like such a mountain to climb. It's not just about saying sorry.
Right. It's got to be more than that.
It takes action, consistent action, to show you're serious about change.
Like, imagine trying to fix a shattered vase.
Yeah.
Right? You can glue the pieces back together, sure, but those cracks, they're always going to be there. Constant reminder of the damage.
Such a powerful image. But the source material does offer a glimmer of hope.
Okay, good, because I need some hope right now.
They suggest that acceptance, and I don't mean condoning what happened,
Right.
but true acceptance can be a path forward.
Interesting.
It's about acknowledging the hurt, but making a conscious choice not to let that one event define the whole relationship.
Okay, so we've talked about these different levels of trust, the risks, how to maybe repair things after a betrayal, but let's get practical,
Yeah.
How do we actually build trust in the first place? Well, good news. The Earning Trust resource gives us a whole toolbox of like trustworthy behaviors.
Yeah.
So let's dive into a few that I think are super relevant. Ready to take some notes? Okay, so picking up where we left off with those trustworthy behaviors, one that really jumped out at me, authenticity.
Oh, for sure.
Like showing up as our true selves, even, and maybe especially when it feels a little risky, right? Like putting yourself out there.
Absolutely, because that vulnerability can be surprisingly disarming.
Yeah,
It creates space for, real connection.
totally. It's like that Brene Brown quote, right? She says, authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we are. And it's in those moments of realness that we truly connect.
Yeah, and it makes sense, right? Because none of us are perfect. We've all got our flaws, mistakes we've made. But it's how we handle those imperfections that's what really matters.
Probably.
The honesty, the humility, the willingness to learn and grow from those experiences.
That's what builds trust. It shows you're in the arena with everyone else, not above it all.
Exactly. And, inevitably in any relationship, trust is going to get broken sometimes. And the source material really emphasizes this point. When that happens, we gotta own it, acknowledge the breach, apologize for any harm caused, but also, walk the talk.
Actions speak louder than words, for sure, especially when you're trying to rebuild that trust.
100%.
But it's a two-way street, right? Like it takes time.
Absolutely. Forgiveness, it doesn't mean forgetting.
No.
And it definitely doesn't mean you just brush it off like nothing happened.
Right.
It's about making a conscious choice to move forward without letting that one incident define everything.
It's that whole, like, the cover-up is worse than the crime thing. Open communication is key.
I think that's so well said. And sometimes, as hard as it is to admit,
Yeah.
not all relationships can be salvaged.
That's true.
If someone keeps breaking your trust, despite your efforts to, work through it,
Yeah.
it might be time to reevaluate their place in your life.
It's about setting healthy boundaries. Wow. Because we teach people how to treat us by what we tolerate. And sometimes walking away is the healthiest choice for everyone involved.
I think that's such an important point to make. We have to prioritize our own well-being, surround ourselves with people who uplift us, who we feel safe with.
100%. And, this whole conversation has been really eye-opening for me. It's like we often think of trust as this black and white thing. You either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
But it's so much more nuanced than that.
It's true. It's an ongoing process.
It's fluid.
It's about building, maintaining, and sometimes even letting go.
Thinking back to that trust but verify idea, it makes me wonder, is there ever a point where verification isn't necessary? Like, can we ever truly just trust without that element of doubt?
It's a great question, and I think it gets to the heart of what the Earning Trust resource calls unconditional trust.
Ah, right. That almost mythical level of trust we touched on earlier.
Exactly. And I don't know if mythical is the right word, but it definitely requires, well, let's just say it's a different level of relationship.
Okay, so how do we get there? Is it even possible with everyone? Or are some people, like, hardwired for that trust but verify mode?
I think we all have the capacity for deep, abiding trust, but it's cultivated, not just given freely.
Okay, so it's a process, like we've been talking about.
Exactly. And it starts, I believe, with ourselves, that self-trust you were talking about earlier.
Right, like trusting our own judgment, instincts, all of that.
Because if we can't trust ourselves, how can we possibly expect others to trust us, right?
It's that whole broken vase analogy again. You can't pour from an empty cup, as they say.
Precisely. So it's about doing that inner work, building that strong sense of self so we can then extend that trust to others from a place of wholeness, not lack.
It's like we become a source of trust, not just someone constantly seeking it from others.
Exactly. And that, I think, is the key to unlocking those deeper, more fulfilling relationships where, maybe trust but verify isn't always necessary.
Because you just know deep down that the other person has your back. Wow, that's powerful. This whole conversation has given me a lot to think about. As we wrap things up, any final thoughts for our listeners on this whole trust journey?
I think the biggest takeaway is that trust, it's not passive. It's an active choice we make every single day.
It's a verb.
Exactly. And it's in those small, consistent actions, those moments of choosing courage over comfort, vulnerability over armor, that we build the foundation for something truly remarkable.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So, folks, there you have it. Trust. It's messy, it's essential, and it's a journey worth taking. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And remember, even small steps in the right direction can make a world of difference. Until next time, keep exploring, keep connecting, and keep building that trust.